I think it might not be the worst thing in the world to start getting friendly with the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese, because I don't think as much. It's like, and this is the thing that people, when you say something like this, people immediately jump to the conclusion, oh, you must be defending Putin, or you must be defending the Ayatollah. It's like, no. I made a conscious decision way back in 2008 not to live in Russia because already then the place struck me as being a little too authoritarian for my liking. But that being said, I think that things are going to start changing faster and faster. And if you look, I mean, hindsight is always 2020, right? If you look back at the last sort of 10, 15 years, it seems obvious that things have already been changing. But I think we'll see them change faster and faster.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is the Straight No Chaser podcast, where we talk about human freedom through money, technology, philosophy, and economics. This is the next edition of the monthly roundup. We have Ricky and Herman on board. Oaken is otherwise engaged. We'll catch him next month. Today we chat about a wide range of things, from new tech in the Bitcoin space and AI, privacy tech, and then some general chats about some up-and-coming proposed legislation. We give updates on the draft capital flows regulation that's causing a bit of a stir as far as physical property rights go. So it's a good all-rounded chat. Nice to have the guys with us today, and I know you guys will enjoy this one. Awesome. Good morning, boys and girls. Lucky to have you all back again. Lots and lots has been happening. AR space, tech space. But yeah, we got Ricky and Herman here. How's it, guys? How's it going?
How's it?
No complaints, man.
Lekker. Listen, I think most recent little bit of news first, perhaps. But before we get to that, I just wanted to open up today's one with a little bit of a joke. I think the clever people will get this one. Tether, the company behind USDT, the world's largest stablecoin, announced.
That's a very funny joke.
Yes, thank you. Just announced Tether wallet, and they do say a new self-custodial app. It made me smile from ear to ear. Because I think the last bit of Tether news I read was $4 billion in tokens locked at the behest of the US government. So I'm not sure how they get a self-custodial app with their token. But anyway, on that not so funny note, Herman, you've just come back from BTC Prague, man. Please, yeah, how was it? What's happening in the European world?
It was good, man. I always enjoy going to Europe. But like I said to you just before we got on the call, I feel a kind of an affinity with the European Bitcoiners. Not with Europeans in general, but specifically with European Bitcoiners. They seem to understand that Bitcoin is freedom money, and you got to use it if you want it to be that. The institutionalization crowd seems to be a little less overpowering. I mean, Prague is a big conference, right? And compared to the big conference in the US, there's a lot more like sort of grassroots peer-to-peer stuff happening in Prague than there seems to be in the US. So it's good. I enjoyed it.
Standout talks. What was your sort of highlights on the conference?
I mean, I'm kind of over going to talks at conferences. Like, I don't attend too many of them. I think I only watched 3, and those were 3 that I specifically wanted to see. other than that, it's all just trying to connect and talk with people. But the three talks that I really enjoyed was the first one was by Francis from Bull Bitcoin, and we briefly discussed that before the call as well, where Bull Bitcoin has decided to take some European jurisdictions to court over DAC8. I just read up about it. DAC8 is a data sharing agreement between 47 jurisdictions in Europe, and it's an automated data sharing agreement. So what happens is that they're creating this massive honeypot of information where, I assume 47 countries sounds like basically the whole European Union, essentially. And so
it's actually more than that. It's bigger than the European Union. I think it's like 20 odd countries. So it's probably
it's more than that. So but jurisdictions could mean something else other than countries. But anyway, it's whatever it is. It's the whole of Europe. And so what they and I wish there was a recording of this talk. I couldn't find one, but it's basically creating a situation where all crypto companies across the entire Europe automatically shares data with each other. So this is not in cases where data is being requested. It's like as soon as you submit your KYC data to an exchange in, I don't know, France, it goes to the same centralized directory as whether you're submitting your data from an exchange in Portugal or Finland or whatever the case may be. So that and Bull Bitcoin is taking this to court, and so they're starting in France, and they're using their own company treasury to finance this. And so that talk was great. There was also a great talk by Jack Cruz, where I finally decided that I think he's full of shit. And he's full of shit, and he's followers of not obsessed people are also full of shit, because this whole thing is basically, as far as I can tell, one big virtue signal, and it's not proposing a solution, and nobody's talking about a solution. But the more you ask them about how this is going to actually technically solve the problem, the more they shout about how bad it is that all this stuff is being put on chain. And it's like, okay, yeah, I also think it's bad. I think it sucks. I don't want to see horrific images stored on the Bitcoin blockchain. But if your solution is not actually going to solve the problem, then what the fuck are we doing? And the more you ask that question, the louder they shout about how bad it is that the stuff is on chain. And then you just go around and around in this repetitive circle where, yes, I agree, it's bad that the stuff is on chain, but you're threatening to fork the chain for what? It's not actually solving anything. So what are we doing here? And so that was great, because it was that, and there was a debate on that as well. The debate was moderated by Stefan Livera, and the person arguing with the most sense is actually somebody that I don't like at all, which is a guy called Peter Todd. I don't like that character, but one has to sort of recognize that it's a valid point to make, which is that, okay, but if your solution, again, if the solution does not actually solve the problem of spam on a technical level, then what are we doing here? Why are we potentially threatening to fork the chain if you yourself admit that this is basically just a virtue signal, which is what was actually admitted on that panel by somebody on the not side of the debate, which is like, well, it's not solving the problem, but it's a virtue signal. It's us saying that this is what we want. It's like, yeah, that's great. There's many things that I want that I can't get. So what's the point of all this? So I think, those were great talks. I didn't even bother going to the Sailor talk because it's boring. And yeah, that was about it, eh?
Cool, man. I've actually never been to that conference. Haven't actually been to the city, in fact, now that I think about it. So it is up there on my list. I think that scene over the bridge in the evening with the lights and the city in the background, the old part of the city is amazing. It's always been it's a bit like Croatia. Every time I see a picture of an incredible coastline, I think, damn it, that looks amazing, got to go. And then I find out it's Croatia. So that's happened about 10 times. So Croatia's on my bucket list, and so is Prague. We'll get ourselves through there. Herman, just wanted to ask you quickly, you said that you more affinity with the European Bitcoiners because they seem to be a little bit more privacy, anti-establishments than the American guys. Do you think that's a little bit like the previous communist countries are totally anti-communist? That sort of approach. Guys that have sort of been hit hardest seem to wake up quickest, and maybe the US has been hit less hard, less quickly.
To be honest, I don't know why. I think it might have something to do with that. Especially in the Czech Republic, they seem to be very anti the whole communist movement. So it could be that. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think it's like I said. I don't think it's got something to do with Europeans in general. I think it's European Bitcoiners specifically. Normal Europeans I find quite intolerable. But the European Bitcoiners, they seem to be a sort of a very strong cypherpunk idealism with the European Bitcoiners, whereas the Americans just seem to be more sort of, you obviously get the cypherpunks there too, but that's just that they seem more ready to sort of like just accept the institutionalization of Bitcoin in the US, whereas in Europe, I think maybe also what might have something to do with it, but this is a more recent thing, but what might have something to do with it is that the clampdown in Europe just seems more obvious, whereas in the US, the clampdown, especially the last couple of years, don't seem that obvious. It seems to be a different line of attack in the US, where they kind of coming from the angle of, we'll replace your freedom money with stablecoins, and we'll let you hold Bitcoin on Coinbase. So yeah, but I don't know exactly why.
Okay, no, just curious if you'd picked up anything there. Talking about clampdown and attack, Ricky, I do want to ask before we dig into any other news items, and that's probably primarily because there was a little news-related thing where Rwanda has now got some virtual asset law that they've introduced, which is now new restrictions on digital assets. Come straight back to the property rights defense. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's been happening in the background, and just bring us up to speed there?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say that before we get started, that last year, Herman and I traveled to Prague together, and it was a great experience going to Prague. Very sorry I didn't get to go to BTC Prague this year, but I'm sure not as sorry as Herman was having to travel by himself, not having me there to shepherd him around and buy him his tonic, because I know that's what he likes to drink. But yeah, anyway, back onto the PRD stuff. Yeah, so essentially, as you know, the comment window has been expanded until the 30th of June, which is coming up now in 14 days. So that's when the comment window closes. So Property Rights Defense Group has completed its submission. We've yet to push it out there still, because our expectation is that the government is going to do some last minute things before the 30th. So you want to give them as little time to respond as possible. We're obviously not being that hubristic to think they're actually going to read our submission, but the general public is. So that's going to be going out in the next few days. And then membership drive, people can join the Property Rights Defense membership base and actually get your name behind this thing. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at the moment. We've seen a lot of movement over the past few weeks from society at large and industry players. Both Luno and Vela have come out much more strongly opposed to this. I mean, they first made their first submissions before the first comment window expired, and then they got rugged by the government, and the government expanded that window. So then, luckily, both Luno and Vela have come out now with stronger statements. Both of them saying that, these regulations will kill the industry. It's a bad idea. Capital controls are really what should go. So yeah, that's kind of the lay of the land at the moment. We've been speaking behind the scenes to a lot of players. Everyone's up in arms about it. Everyone's upset by this. And look, at the end of the day, what this comes down to is capital controls. We should not have capital controls in a free and open society. They should not exist. Yet here we are. So I think one thing people should, come to terms with is that the government hates you. Whether you're in Europe or in the US or in South Africa, it doesn't matter, or Rwanda, it doesn't matter. The government hates you. They are doing everything in their power to screw you. And if you have that lens, then you'll be okay, because you'll be, antagonistic, adversarial, have an adversarial mindset. Nothing the government does is for your benefit. It's for their vested interest benefit. And so you should expect them to try to screw you over wherever they can. So yeah, that's kind of what's happening. As Hadron was saying, now they're seeing this data sharing law they want to push in the Eurozone. That's just so that they can monitor people more. It's the same reason why in the UK they wanted, have a minimum age for social media, and they want to have the phone manufacturers have on-device monitoring of what you do on your phone. It's like 1984 personified. It's absolutely crazy. So yeah, I think people should realize that governments around the world are trying to take away your freedom. And once your freedom is gone, it's very, very hard to get back. Ask the North Koreans. Actually, you can't ask them because they're not allowed to speak to you. But that's what happens. They take your freedom. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now. But we are fighting the good fight. PRD is growing nicely. Yeah, we're making some headway.
Cool, man. I actually just want to add on to what you said there about your government hates you, because I think in South Africa we have this DA is going to save us mentality, a lot of people. But, this whole AI debacle with these AI regulations, I actually just found out today that's a DA minister that put forward that whole thing. And not only was it a hash, but the DA is supposed to be small government run effectively. And this guy was just wanting to create 7 new institutions to regulate AI. And I know this whole foot and mouth disease that John Estiano is, and also a DA member, has, some people have called it the worst DA disaster in the history of the party. So I'm not really into party politics, but I thought just on what you said about your government hates you, I think South Africans need to wake up and start looking to a government or an individual or a person to come and save them. It just ain't going to happen.
Gavin, what would ever give you the idea that the DA is about small government? Like, maybe they said that in the 1990s when Tony Leon was pushing the libertarian angle, but I think they abandoned that position a long time ago. I think the DA, I haven't voted DA in a long time, thankfully. And to me, they're just the Democrats in the US. It's the same thing. I mean, Helen Zille is Hillary Clinton without the body count, basically, in my opinion. She maybe hasn't had as many people off as allegedly as Hillary Clinton has. But yeah, at the end of the day, these guys are like globalists, you see the things they're doing. And they say one thing, and then when they get in power, they just become the ANC light. And I see now the VF+ is pushing the small government narrative. If the VF+ gets into power, they'll be the same as the DA. The solution here is not politics. Politicians exist to scam you. That's, they're really about saying one thing so that people vote for them, but at the other side of their mouth, they're talking to their vested interest groups and ultimately giving the vested interest groups what they want. That's what politics is about. It's literally about sleight of hand. It's about telling a group of people one thing to get voted in, and then doing another thing for the people that actually paid for you to get there, and funded your entire rise to power. So yeah, I mean, the DA is pushing the digital ID thing. They're pushing the vaccine drive with foot and mouth. No. And I don't know if you guys have seen the video of Helen Zille flying a drone, the recent video she made in Joburg, flying a drone over this abandoned municipal pool area that the ANC let go to rack and ruin. She's flying it with her phone. Well, allegedly. It looks like she's summoning a demon. It's crazy. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. She's squinting at her phone like this. She's like, Helen, stop. Apparently there's Fujimo DJing in 4 ways over the weekend as well. Someone needs to put Helen back in her home. She's out of control.
Yeah, politicians, hey, you got to love them. Nobody can embarrass themselves like a politician. When you see these guys dancing on stage and they do, it's like they're kissing the babies. I mean, come on. It just infuriates me. But
just a public service announcement: never let a politician kiss your baby. They'll try to suck its soul out of it. Don't do that.
Yeah, okay. So let's park that politics thing. It's such a dull, going nowhere topic. Wanted to chat a little bit about, there's been such a bunch of tech stuff coming out, which I think is awesome. Top of the list, once again, shout out to Sparrow, local guys building world-class software. They've announced the silent payments that they now support. What I'm loving about this is, if you ever have to deal with an exchange and you normally have to put a Bitcoin address on an exchange, because they don't just let you pick and choose on the fly. You sort of have to almost like enroll an address to do something with it. This could be an interesting way to just put that address on, and then the silent payment does this thing behind the scenes. I haven't actually messed with it yet, and that's simply because hardware wallets I use don't yet support it. So I haven't actually started messing around. Any of you guys looked at the silent payments thing yet?
Yeah, it's a great feature. We were actually lucky enough to have Josie, who wrote the spec for silent payments last year after the conference, hang out with us for a bit in our workspace here in Cape Town. So I got to pick his brain about how it works. Fast forward now, it's great to see that Sparrow is incorporated into the latest release. It doesn't yet work on the hardware wallets that I'm using as well. I've seen that, but I have played around with some software wallets. Essentially what it is you can just provide a static address that you can reuse. People just keep sending money to that one static address, and it hides the transaction history. So effectively, you can, instead of just leaking all your privacy by having one single address, you can now use a single address, which is a silent address, and receive payments that way. It supports receiving and sending now on Sparrow, which is great. So massive privacy gains. It has to be adopted by the hardware wallet, so you've got to update your firmware and all of that. So we're going to see this kind of slow adoption across the whole ecosystem. Great that Sparrow is integrated from the start, because for me, Sparrow is my go-to. That's the benchmark I use for what a software wallet should, or coordination software should be. Is Sparrow, and I think a lot of people around the world use it as well. So it's a great one. But shout out to hardware wallet manufacturers. They need to update their firmware to support this too.
Yeah, please, people, jump on the bandwagon. Support the South African tech. It's important. The thing I think that's awesome about Sparrow is you can just connect your hardware wallet to it, and then you can just park your hardware wallet. You don't have to if you're receiving payments, you can just, you don't have to pull out your hardware wallet every single time you want to receive a payment to get the address. You can just pull up an address and send it, and it works like a dream. The only downside is you stand a severe risk of forgetting your PIN number on your hardware wallet because you haven't used it for a couple of years. So don't make that mistake.
Yeah, look, if you've got adequate backups, then you should be able to deal with that. But yeah, using the watch-only functionality on Sparrow is great, especially if you're using an air-gap wallet like a Seed Signer or a Jade or a Cold Card. To be honest, everyone should be using air-gapped hardware wallets if you're using hardware wallets, right? The UX is so good now; it's so much easier than it used to be, especially the QR standards. That there's no reason not to be using air-gapped hardware wallets.
Next little news item that I thought was super, super cool. I don't know if I probably will butcher this name. IJMA. I think I've said that badly, but it's IJMA. This is a new open source wallet for Bitcoin. And when I first read that first part, I was like, I think we've got enough wallets here. Do we need more wallets? But then I went on to read, not only does it do Bitcoin, eCash, and handles Nostr apps and all of that, but it is a progressive web app, which means you can use this thing on your mobile phone without it having to be on a app store or a Play Store anywhere, which is super cool because those are extra gatekeepers. And if you don't have to go through that and someone can just log in to a web. Essentially, it's basically a web browser that you would use. Now, I haven't messed with it. This is not an endorsement of the product. Please, I haven't tried it. But I think the idea of just being able to no longer have to now download an app off an app store potentially is amazing. So I haven't seen that before, but sounds super cool. I'm not sure if you guys have come across something like this before.
Yeah, like I think apps in the App Store are going to be a thing of the past because app stores are just centralized censorship hellscapes. Like if any of you guys worked in publishing apps before, you dealt with this, it's fucking bullshit. It sucks so much. Like it takes weeks to get an app out there. You have to submit it to these overlords. You're just like dealing with bots the whole time. It's a nightmare, absolute nightmare. But that being said, like progressive web apps, are not necessarily the answer because you don't get all the native features of the phone. And APKs are also not always the answer because that doesn't work with iPhone, it only works with Android phones. And like some Android phones, like Google is not talking about trying to block APKs, which is madness. But yeah, anyway, so any kind of wallet that sits outside of that ecosystem is down the right track. Because like you want to build cool features into your wallet, then the App Store says no. So the Zap Store is kind of cool, it's like a Noster Zap Store. I haven't played around with it too much, but the concept sounds pretty good. But yeah, essentially anything that gives you the freedom to like write or like download your own software and run it on your own device without having to go through a centralized gatekeeper is a massive one. Because those gatekeepers are just going to get more and more constrained because they're getting pressure on them from the communist baby eaters at the EU and wherever else the overlords live. So they're going to get pressure and they're just going to get worse and worse. The app stores are just going to get terrible, basically.
Speaking of Noster, actually, I see there's also something awesome there, Noster VPN. This is something that popped up, I think, in the last couple of weeks. Also, once again, I haven't even had a chance to have a look at that, but I've just been reading the news stuff. In the background, Russia's been banning VPNs, and countries are starting to get wise to this whole VPN thing. Noster being based, one of these decentralized things, hopefully that can avoid that. Anyone use the Noster VPN to see what it can do?
No, I haven't yet.
No, I haven't. I did find a useful use case for. I've been experimenting with what's that app called, Keat, which is a peer-to-peer messenger. Does video calls, and the story is that both in Russia and in the UAE actually. Where I've got people that I'm talking to, it's been getting more and more difficult to use messengers like WhatsApp and Telegram. Even if you use a VPN, a lot of the VPNs don't work anymore. And whereas Keat, if you're able to, as long as you're able to install the app on your device, which can sometimes be a little bit of a hassle. But if you can get the app onto your device, it works like a charm without a VPN. Video calls, it's a little slower than WhatsApp, but it works great. My son is actually using it to chat to his grandma in Russia. I took WhatsApp off of his phone because of the built-in Meta AI. I refuse to have my kid chat to Meta's AI, and they were using Telegram, but that was also shut down if you're not using a VPN. And so the alternative was either Keat or some very obscure messaging app, or the Russian the official government sanctioned messaging app, which is obviously not going to happen. So it's interesting. I mean, it's really the first real world use case I've encountered where we didn't really have an alternative other than that. I mean, I've been using it with people just because I like it, but came across this as the first sort of real world use case where we didn't really have an alternative. I'm sure there are other apps out there that work as well, but Keat was just the first and most obvious one I went to. Works really well. I was expecting it to be a little slower than what it is, but it's pretty smooth.
Yeah, Keat's another one of those techs that I see pop up in my sort of socials reels all the time, or adverts for it, or whatever. I know one of the gas one from Bitcoin Audible. I think he's busy working on something called Pair Drive. It's 2 weeks away from release for the past 5 years. Yeah. So yeah, I think he's using the same sort of tech that Keat is built on. I'm guessing it is being used for that as well. And I think the idea there is going to be file sharing and doing peer-to-peer stuff without having to run through centralized servers or something. So that's super cool. I know it's I think we actually spoke about it last month, but BitChat recently enabled the ability to transfer the app from one mobile device to another. Like you can download the app from your friend's mobile device. Maybe Keat, maybe Keat and those guys will come up with that as well. That is a super cool feature.
Like viral app sharing. Wow. That's cool. I like it. Gavin, I don't know if you've got this on your list of things to discuss, but have you got the new Start9 OS 0.40 release on the list?
I do not. So by all means, go for it.
So I've been playing around with the new 0.40 release. It's a whole new overhaul of Start OS. So they were on 3.5.1 before, and 0.4 was like a whole new built from the ground up OS. And the biggest difference is that you can expose services and access services via ClearNet when you're no longer in your own local Wi-Fi network. So previously how it works is like if you in your own local network to where your Start9 server is, your home Wi-Fi network, you can access your services no problem. But most people leave their houses, right? It's not COVID anymore. So people go out of their houses. And then the only way you could access your server was via Tor, which is slow, cut user experience, and then you end up not using your services. Just like takes forever, things time out, doesn't work so well. So the new one, 4.0, you can access those services by either opening ports on your own home Wi-Fi router, or you can use this thing called Start Tunnel, which is open source software they built, which lets you spin up a virtual router on a virtual machine in the cloud. So then that acts as your router, and you can like Start Tunnel into that. So then you can expose services via ClearNet that people can access without them seeing your home Wi-Fi IP address, which is great. And you can have limit who sees it. You can whitelist certain devices, or you can make the entire service open on ClearNet if you want to. What this means is that you can access all of your services from your Start9 server wherever you are. So like your Vault Warden password manager, for example, that lives in your Start9 server. You can access that anywhere in the world now by setting up your virtual router. You can access your BTC Pay server, your file storage. There's like open source file storage. There's CryptPad, which is like your own Word, Excel document management stuff. And there's a whole bunch more services that are being added constantly onto both registries, the Start9 and the community registry. And with Claude, or with coding tools now, you can build your own service that's wrapped for Start9. So you can like sideload your own services. So now all your projects you want to build yourself, you want to vibe code yourself, you can self-host it on your own server and make it publicly available or whitelist certain devices to be able to see them. So all of a sudden this like self-hosting stuff became way more powerful, way more usable. Like the services that are on there that you can like do like one-click deploys are super useful. Like Jitsi, for example, you can now run all your video calls for your entire organization via Jitsi, all self-hosted. All your transcription can happen right there on your own device. Then you can use OpenWebUI, which is like a AI interface for running different models. It keeps all your chat history local on your own device. CAXNG is like a privacy-focused web search that aggregates search results across a bunch of different search providers like Brave and Google and whatever. But you can tie those together with your AI models. So now you can do web search that's private. and you can run your own AI models. Like you can't run your models locally because you don't have the hardware necessary to be able to run it. But you can use a service like ppq.ai. Matt Elberg, shout out, built that. So you can connect that up to your own. So you can basically offboard your compute for your AI stuff to PPQ, pay for it in sats, no account necessary. So it's like pseudonymous. And then you basically can run all of that through your Start9 server. So like all of a sudden you can vibe code your own projects, save them to your own self-hosted Git repo on your Start9 server, and then build your services there, host your services there, access them wherever you are in the world. Like it has just become super, super useful. So Start9 is doing amazing stuff. And this new OS, it's still in beta, but you can, if you've got a Start9 server or if you've built one yourself, you can flash it and run that OS. It's pretty easy. I did it, so it can't be that hard. Yeah, it's wild. It's Paddy Oakins out here. I mean, he works for Start9. He can tell us much more about it. But he's been shouting at me for months saying 0.40 is going to blow your mind. And he's correct. It's amazing. Very, very cool.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's been I don't run Start9. I've got a couple of Umbrel devices around here. Also super cool. But that has been my one bugbear is I just cannot access the stuff when I'm away from home. And even using Tailscale, that works well. So I can sort of SSH in remotely. But as soon as I want to access like Nextcloud or BTC Pay Server, it still picks up that I'm actually not on the native home network and it still blocks me. So I've had this list on my to-dos about how to get around this thing for months and I haven't actually kind of sussed it out. So I think you've just solved my problem there, dude. I'll buy you a beer next time I see you.
It's not possible with Umbrel. That's the thing. So, and exactly that problem you just highlighted there. Like basically you have to SSH in or you've got to access it via Tor. And that is just natively a bad user experience. There's no way around it. Basically what the virtual private router does is it puts your router in the cloud, but then limits who can access that router. Like you have to share a certificate with devices that want to join it. So they actually have to have a certificate loaded onto the device. And then you get the IP address so you can access it yourself. And that way you can like have just yourself and family on your own. You know, that adding the devices is pretty easy once you've got it set up. But then, for example, your wife's version of Bitwarden, she can access her own profile on your Vault Warden that's sitting on your device. You know, your file storage. So, like instead of Google Drive, you can have your own partition drive there that your family can access. You can just keep adding hard drives as you need to the server. So then, you know, you can just keep everything much more private. And the biggest thing for me, I know Hadman's been vibe coding as well, is that when you start vibing and you start building up a history with Claude or GPT or whatever, like eventually you've given it so much information about yourself that it's terrifying. It's, you know, and that's where things get super creepy because now what happens when they pass these AI laws with these, your chat history for the past 5 years with your AI model of choice now needs to be shared with the government. I mean, not what you want. Not what you want. So before you get to the point where you've built such a cohesive like profile about yourself with your favorite chatbot, you should probably look to self-host that. Yeah, so like the stack that I've figured out that works on Start9 is using Open Web UI with PPQ. It doesn't give you like complete privacy because your chat history is still being sent, you know, in clear text to Claude or to whatever model you're using via ppq.ai. But you are accessing it via ppq.ai's APIs. You don't have an account with them. They don't know who you are. And therefore that information isn't linked back to an individual. And the retention policy they use, because they're using enterprise version, is only 30 days. So like you get quite a lot of like pseudonymous trade-offs there where like they don't know who you are. If you're masking your IP address, like the Start tunnel, they don't have your IP address, they can't really infer it. So it's like a decent like pseudonymous setup. And then PPQ's also got these now natively private models where they encrypt everything and it goes into a secure encrypted cluster, blah, blah, blah. Basically, not even the inference model can see like what it is that you're querying. So yeah, good privacy gains to be had there. And you can run Start9 on your own device if you've got a machine that can run it, or you can buy a pre-made device from Start9. Assembling your own server is probably a great way to go, flashing it yourself, but it needs to be an always-on server, so like a NUC or something will work for it.
Cool, man. Thanks for that. I'm definitely going to go check that out because, well, I don't know if Umbrel's got something in the pipeline. I don't really follow their news updates or whatever. So if anyone knows if Umbrel's got something similar coming up, let me know. Otherwise, I might just swing over to Start9 anyway and check that out.
But if you're running Umbrel on a device already, as long as it's not a Raspberry Pi, if you got like a better device that you're running it on, you can run your Start9 on that.
Yeah, so actually I do have a Raspberry Pi running Umbrel on one thing just to mess around with, and then I've got one of those Umbrel home devices. It's also like the sort of pre-built little unit. Could I run, I mean, it sounds like sacrilegious, but I mean, to buy an Umbrel home unit and then run Start9 on it, will that work?
I mean, if it's running Linux, I'm sure you can. It's like a lot of extra work to do it that way, to set it up, but I'm sure you can flash it with StartOS. Probably. The thing is, like, you can run StartOS no problem on a Raspberry Pi as long as you're not doing a Bitcoin core node on that. The core node is where things fall apart, which sucks because you want to run your own node. But if you've got a Raspberry Pi 4B or 5 or whatever, you can easily run StartOS on it. Just don't. There's some services you shouldn't run. But the better thing to do is just buy a NUC from Takealot or whatever. That's got 2 terabyte SSD, maybe 16 gigs of RAM, like decent onboard CPU, and then run it that way. But I think the Umbrel home device will probably meet all the criteria you need to flash it with StartOS. But yeah, it's a bit sacrilegious, but whatever. It'll probably work just fine.
Yeah, I may have to like kill something and sprinkle some blood in it or something before I do that to make sure it works. I don't know. But yeah, talking about tech bouncing around quite quickly, I saw something. AMD have released a little lunchbox size thing that they claim is a quarter of the price of the NVIDIA equivalent unit, and beats it in terms of processing power on that. So it just seems it's the leapfrog game. You know, one makes one big announcement, a few weeks later, the next one. So things are moving super fast. It's really hard to keep up with. Anyway, bringing it back sort of into Africa again, Tando, I see the Kenyan guys. They have now added Kenyan phone numbers can now become Bitcoin Lightning addresses. I mean, geez, where do these guys get these clever ideas from? It's flipping genius. You know, instead of having to now remember your Lightning URL or your LN address, now your mobile number just becomes the thing. That is super cool.
Yeah, because it's already a unique identifier, right? So like, it's perfect. You have your cell number at tando.com. Good to go, you know, and they just automatically by default create them for people. It's like just send to this is your Lightning address now. Hadran, I don't know, was Jason in Prague? I got to spend some time with him 2-3 weeks ago in Vienna. We were at a workshop together. But yeah, what Tando is doing is really cool. Those guys are on the ball. You should definitely, Gavin, might be worthwhile trying to get Jason onto one of these in the future, because he's building out Tando based in Nairobi. But yeah, doing some very cool stuff.
I'll be seeing him in Nairobi when I go next week. But no, he was not in Prague. I think they're at the BTC conference, which kind of sort of overlaps with the Prague conference. So
yeah, that's the one in Nairobi, huh?
Yes, that's also Nairobi.
Because they got BTC Nairobi, and then they've got the BTC Nairobi conference like next month. Not this month, right? 10 days time.
Yeah, it's next week. Starting next week, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that used to be adopting Bitcoin, Nairobi, but is now changed their colors to I think it's just called Nairobi Bitcoin Conference or something like that.
Yes. Indeed.
Sorry, I left my mic on mute there. Once again, lots of tech stuff. I see the Stratum V2. The big mining companies seem to be joining the standard. Not quite sure what to make of that. I think Stratum V2 is better than Stratum V1, as far as general statements go. But all the big guys joining it. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I'm not really too involved in the mining industry. I know centralization is a problem, something that everyone talks about. So anything where individual miners can create their own block template, I think is a good thing. And that's what V2 seems to allow people to do. I know the Ocean guys have that same functionality as well. This was something we sort of spoke about briefly at the Adopting Bitcoin conference, like, is mining centralization solved? Ricky, you didn't seem to think it had been solved yet or whatever. Thoughts, anything happened in the last few months that has swayed your opinion, or do you still think things are still way too centralized?
Yeah, I think things are still way too centralized and not much has changed there. I wonder what is happening with the geopolitics state of things with mining, because if Iran has realized that accepting payments in stablecoins is a fool's errand and that the Americans are just going to steal your stablecoins, which it seems they've realized, and now they're accepting payments in Bitcoin. There's long been rumors they've been mining Bitcoin. I've been saying this for a while. Like, I'm pretty sure they are still. How's this going to change? Because every other nation state has watched this whole Hormuz crisis play out. And I think if they've seen, okay, so stablecoins are not a safe place to keep your money, Bitcoin really is the only safe place to keep your money, what is that going to do to mining? Like, are these countries now going to be incentivized to start mining just to protect, their own stack, as it were? We see Eskom talking about getting into Bitcoin mining. I know the Ethiopians are already into it. Very interesting. So hopefully the next layer of decentralization around mining happens between antagonistic nation states that are not actually mining to protect their own stack. But that's all just speculation on my part, personally.
Yeah, sort of an interesting one, because if you're a nation state and you are doing your own mining, surely you want to be in total control of the block template if you do strike it. That's not something you want to be dishing out. And I think that seems to be a general trend where we see governments are now looking at the tech stack that they run in their own institutions and then deciding, hang on, the Europeans aren't happy running American software anymore. So, now the Germans are running Nextcloud in the government, as far as I know. I don't know if it's all the departments, but certainly a lot of them are doing that. And I think there seems to be more and more of a move away from this global, these massive global companies or American companies providing services to the entire world, and countries are saying, well, hang on, is this such a good idea? Interesting to see where that goes. In terms of AI models, the big ones we all know and talk about are basically American, but the Chinese guys with the DeepSeek stuff and Quen and all these other models are not far behind, and they certainly don't ask for permission before they build or release or go wild. So all these things about Anthropic's Fable and Mythos that's now being gate-kept and banned so people can't use it. I don't think the Iranians and the Chinese or the Russians are going to ask Donald for permission before they start running stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I also think what the Iran-US-Israel war has proven over the last few months is diplomacy gets you basically nowhere with these people. All they understand is force, sadly. So expect to see a lot more of that because Iran achieved in the past, 3 months via force what they haven't achieved in 40 years of diplomacy. So, I think it's the US and Israel only really respect anyone who responds, who shows force back to them. So it's going to be interesting to see how other nation states respond to this and how they start securing their stacks and their bags. Are they going to be doing this with nuclear energy, like mining Bitcoin with nuclear power, follow the Iranian route of putting a Bitcoin miners underground where those pin bunker busters can't get to them. Interesting times, very interesting times. But I think a lot of countries have seen that the model of appeasement and like just doing what the US imperial empire says doesn't really get you anywhere. Very interesting times.
Yeah, I think on that note, one of the other little sort of political things I jotted down was a senior official at Russia's central bank says Visa and MasterCard should leave the country entirely. Right up with what we were just saying. I mean, that's sort of interesting. But I think the Visa and MasterCard kind of handle the international part of the transactions. All the internal credit card payments are handled by Russia's own tech stack inside the country. So if they kick Visa and MasterCard out, it's not going to affect their internal economy, from what I understand. But Herman, you've probably got a bit more on the ground info on life in the USSR. Can we still say that? I don't know. Maybe if it's in the maybe sponsored by the Beatles, then we can say it. In terms of loud and proud news headlines versus life on the ground, what are you picking up from family members that you speak to about stuff on the ground there, Herman?
I don't know, man. It's I think the general gist is that it's about time that somebody does something. In terms of, I think people are just tired of being told what to do, and as much as it sucks, and I think it does suck, it was kind of inevitable that you ended up in this point. And so there's a lot of how can I put it? My impression is that it's kind of like it's people's attitude is that this is a necessary but very unfortunate but necessary process, because the Western Empire just would not stop when the time comes to stop. Like it'll just keep going and going and going and going. And so at some point you kind of have to do something about it, I suppose. I'm not sure how I feel about the situation, but that's the impression I get from people who are affected by it more closely than I am. I think it's a very difficult situation to judge from the outside. I think until you've had your country attacked, whether that was indirectly, through threatening expansion or more directly through actual bombs dropping on your country, I think it's very hard to say. I spent some time in Istanbul with an Iranian person, and it's a very similar impression that I got from them, which is that, it sucks that it has to come to this, but the aggressor is acting like they didn't do anything, which kind of makes it worse in a way. It's like the bully on the schoolyard who's the one slapping all the kids around, and then is also the first one to run to the teacher when anybody slaps back.
And he's bullying them for their own good. He's telling everyone he's doing it for their own good.
Well, that too, yeah. But it's the bully who does most of the complaining, actually. And it's not a. It kind of sucks, and I don't. My feeling is that it's not going to get any better anytime soon. It's kind of like just going to drag on and on. But my impression is that the situation the situation both in the Middle East and in Russia is kind of just going to drag on and on until, who knows?
Yeah, man. Sorry, just wanted to say, you mentioned, the expansion of the Western Empire. Empires aren't known for slowing down on their own accord. They tend to just run out of steam, or resources, or fighting men, or they run out of mercenaries, or whatever they've used to get to that point. They start running out of, and then there's this slow, steady decline.
Well, they kind of tend to rot from the inside, right? They get to a point where they're still able to project massive force towards the outside, because that's something that you build up with momentum over many, many, many years. It takes perhaps a decade to build one of those massive super carriers, and to outfit it. So this is the kind of thing that you don't just end up in a point where you have 5 or 6 super carriers in your arsenal. So you're able to project all this force to the outside, but at the same time you're kind of rotting from the inside. And if you look at the stuff that's happening inside America, that's what they're projecting, all this force externally, but internally it's just it's rotting. I mean, I like watching the UFC as much as anyone else. Not all the time. I'm not a super fan or anything, but if there's a good fight, then I sometimes enjoy watching some of the bigger clashes. But to do one of those events on the White House lawn in celebration of America's 250 years of independence, you just cannot help but draw parallels between that famous film Idiocracy, and the way that they celebrated this. You cannot help but draw that parallel, and it's kind of funny in a way that this is how, and it's not doing anything to help bridge the divide that is so heavily polarizing that society, and this is kind of symptomatic of the rot. And I think this is how they fall apart. They don't fall apart through military force from the outside, although that kind of contributes, because it's all this military adventures that ends up bankrupting the state. But it's the internal rot. They want to watch guys beat one another up on the White House lawn, and in the meantime not pay any attention to the fact that they're essentially on the verge of bankruptcy. And it's I think it's the internal rot rather than the external resistance that eventually drags them down. They'll keep expanding until they've dragged themselves down.
It's peak bread and circuses. Like,
you
couldn't get more bread and circuses than that.
As much as I like watching it, within context, it's peak bread and circuses.
Yeah, and I mean, like, putting on the White House lawn, like, are they so tone deaf as to think that people wouldn't look at this and be like, "Hey, isn't this bread and circuses?" Like, they're handing out free KFC at the events as well, just to completely. But and there's some nation states that are civilizational states that are that have the wherewithal to, like, not defend against this, but like resist the turbo empire and the decline of the turbo empire. And like, the American empire is, in my opinion, in decline. And so you have like civilizational states like the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians, to another extent the Indians, but they're not doing it as well. But that just kind of have to hang on while turbo America goes full turbo and burns itself out and like just flails into pieces. They just have to survive, So the Russian, this is why I like go back to my comment right at the beginning of this thread, is like, Russia is not the USSR. Russia is not the Soviet Union. Like, the Russian Federation is a federation just like the United States. That's basically the United States of Russia. There's a bunch of republics within the Russian Federal Republic that make up the Federated Russian Republic. And like, it's not the same thing as the USSR. And it doesn't have this expansionist military view where it's going off trying to colonize the rest of the world. And probably because they've seen what's happened to the previous empire, the Soviet Union, which is trying to do that, and what's happening to the Americans now. And so the Russians, I think what they realize is they have enough resources within their borders to keep themselves, to make themselves a superpower, keep superpower status and keep going for the next 1,000 years. And they can forge, and they have enough, land corridors to partners and sea corridors to partners. They can trade with them. So they don't have to take on this expansionist, globalist empire view. So they just have to ride it out. And I think the Russians naturally don't perceive the US as much of a threat because they're far away and they're on the other side of the world, unless you go over the top of the Arctic Circle, which is quite close there. But they perceive the Europeans as a much bigger threat because Europe is a empire as well. I heard a great term for it the other day. It's the Belgian Empire, because that's what the Eurozone is, because it's based out of Brussels. So it's just a reemergence of the Belgian Empire. And we all know what the Belgians did in Congo. But they started out as a monetary union and like a free trade bloc, but it's starting to become a geopolitical bloc. And the rabid anti-Russian, like Russophobia that comes out of the world, or that is emanated, comes out of Europe, comes out of the UK, comes out of France, comes out of Germany. But mainly it comes out of the UK. I think that's the biggest driver for this Russophobia. And what I think is happening is that the British cannot abide by the Germans and the Russians forming an alliance, because they'd be able to dominate the entire European landmass if that was ever possible. So yeah, I think the Russians have a much bigger problem with Europeans at the moment. Europe has tried to invade Russia many, many times. They have a long history of it, and they're not going to stand for it anymore. So yeah, I think they're kind of just pushing up against that. Don't want that to happen. Obviously, the European empire is kind of being pushed along by the American empire. I think what we might see happen is the American empire might rug the Europeans and leave them to their own devices. And if that happens, Europe is going to collapse in a heartbeat, which is a sad state of affairs. So maybe it's good that we've got these Bitcoiners in Europe that are much more freedom orientated and like using Bitcoin as freedom money, because they're going to need it. Like if the Americans stop supporting European adventurism, like the whole Ukraine war collapses overnight. What happens to all the migrants they've got now in Europe? It's a sad state of affairs there for them. So yeah, interesting times to see what's going to happen. I think with the ceasefire deal we've just seen, like who knows if it's actually going to hold or not between Iran and the US. If that can hold, Iran just cements its place as a superpower, at least regionally. And all of a sudden Iran is punching way above its weight compared to where it was. And like this could all been avoided if they didn't bomb Iran. Like Iran, the Australian Hormuz would have been open. Iran wouldn't have been a regional superpower. But they kind of try to push it too far. So very interesting to see where that all goes.
Yeah, just a closing thought from my side on this Iranian thing was the local population seemed to be quite fed up with their government. And, the guys were starting to march and get unhappy, and they were having hyperinflation, and they had just taken 3 zeros off their currency or something. So they were having their own internal grief. And then what happened was suddenly bombs started falling from the sky, and then they rallied around their government super tight. So it was sort of interesting for me to see that change. How,
a lot of that was not organic though. This is what we're coming to realize, like further on here, like those protests we're seeing in Iran, those were CIA and Mossad sponsored protests with paid agents and agitators who'd been armed by Mossad and the CIA. So none of it was organic. So like, I'm not making any excuses for the Iranian government. Like I think living under theocracy is a pretty cuck way to live. But the theocracy, I might have made this point here before, the theocracy in Iran was saying, listen, America and Israel want to destroy us. They want to destroy our way of life. They've been saying this for 49 years. And then it comes true. And so the people in Iran are like, well, these guys did kind of tell us this is what they were trying to do, and now they're bombing us. They waged the economic war on them. Like the reason why the currency hyperinflated was because there was an operation being conducted against them by the Treasury. They've come out, the US Treasury come out and admitted it, and the CIA. So there's just all of this inorganic stuff, like all of these color revolutions that happen. None of it's real. It's all CIA, like MI6, like intel agency sponsored stuff. So it's all like spy versus spy nonsense, So like how much of this, like what is organic sentiment on the ground really? Like do we actually know? Like I'm sure there's a lot of people in Iran that are like, sure, my government sucks, but I think there's a lot of people in Iran also that are like, it could be way worse, like life could be way worse. Maybe they want it a bit better, but like it would seem that these Western-oriented liberal governments, just everything goes to shit under them, like the globalist model just like hollows out your country, creates like this massive disparity between rich and poor, and everything gets worse. So like I think people are waking up to that, realizing like, okay, there must be another way. Like this Euro gay model that they like perpetuate is like doesn't work,
situation.
So yeah, I think people are waking up to it.
Yeah, I think, and the other thing is, what is a typical Iranian? What is a typical American? What is a typical British person? There is no such thing either. I mean, we don't have a typical South African. Yeah, so if you walk down the road and ask the man in the street who you spoke to, if you speak to 20 guys, you'll get 20 different opinions. So I think that's the interesting thing about humans. We're all unique, we're all individuals, and it's kind of hard to talk about typical this and typical that. Anyway, guys, we sort of close on time now. Closing thoughts, quick round robin. Closing thoughts before we wrap up.
I think the only thing I would say is repeat what I sent to my friend in Istanbul, which is that I think it might not be the worst thing in the world to start getting friendly with the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese, because I don't think as much it's like, and this is the thing that people, when you say something like this, people immediately jump to the conclusion, oh, you must be defending Putin, or you must be defending the Ayatollah. It's like, no. I made a conscious decision way back in 2008 not to live in Russia because already then the place struck me as being a little too authoritarian for my liking. But that being said, I think that things are going to start changing faster and faster. And if you look, I mean, hindsight is always 20/20, right? If you look back at the last sort of 10, 15 years, it seems obvious that things have already been changing. But I think we'll see them change faster and faster because the situation that's unfolded in Iran, I mean, it's hard to describe it anything in any other terms other than to say it's been a strategic defeat for the US. I think that's pretty clear. I don't think any rational person is going to be able to rationalize that this was some sort of a victory for the US, where they essentially ended up with an agreement that they already had, but just a slightly worse version than what they already had. And that's after dropping billions of dollars worth of bombs on the country. So what exactly did you accomplish? And so that strikes me as kind of maybe an indication that things are going to change faster. And you might not like the Iranians or the Chinese or the Russians, but that's kind of where a lot of the world is pivoting towards.
Yeah, I echo Herman's sentiments there as well. Like, I don't like the governments of any of those countries, but you'd have to be absolutely blind or willfully ignorant to not see that the standard of living in Russia and China, especially, I can't speak for Iran, but the standard of living in Russia and China over the past 20 years has increased so dramatically. And in the West, it has decreased dramatically. Like, if you go and speak to anyone in Britain and ask them, over the past 20 years, do you think your standard of living has gone up or down? They're going to tell you it's either flat or it's gone down. Very few people are going to say it's gone up. But if you go to Russia and China and you ask people, they're going to tell you it's gotten way better. And this is why people love Vladimir Putin in Russia. This is what people must understand. He has done more for their quality of life than anyone before him has ever done. So people love Vlad because he has improved their quality of life. The same cannot be said for Western leaders. And so, like, I completely agree with Herman's point. Like, if you're in business, start looking east. There is a clear movement of capital happening from west to east. Like, China is being the beneficiary of a large movement of capital, and the West is being hollowed out. So if you want to like look for the next 50 years where you think wealth is going to be, where it's going to be orientated, I don't think it's going to be in the cities of the West anymore. I think it's going to be found in the cities of the East for the next century or two. So bear that in mind. And the second thing, probably more important, is self-host your shit. Like, get all of your stuff self-hosted, because we are going into the most authoritarian Orwellian hellscape you can imagine. If all of your stuff is on the cloud, that means your entire history of everything you is on the cloud. And like the Keir Starmers of the world are sitting there sweating at night thinking about how they're going to get into your data. And like you just don't want that. You don't want Keir trawling through your pictures. So yeah, get your stuff self-hosted. And personally, I just think Start OS has made it super easy, and especially the Start OS 040, way easier than ever before. You can take a lot of that sovereignty back. So yeah, get into that and figure out how to do that. I think it's be very useful. And even if not everyone has to do it, just you can become the Uncle Jim, just like in Bitcoin. You know, you can run your own Start OS server, and then you're the Uncle Jim for your family. You know, your family can host their file storage there, their password manager there, their like private AI models there. You know, you can be the node in your family to do that. So I think people should look to do that. And then thirdly, last point, if you've got any sats lying around, please donate to propertyrightsdefense.org. We are fighting the fight in South Africa. So send some sats over to us, please. We'll keep making their life harder while they try to take away our freedoms.
Lekker, man. Awesome chat as always. Always get a kick out of this. Stuff will be in the show notes. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys again soon at some point. And if not in the flesh, it'll be same time next month. Have a good one.
Lekker. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cool, man. Thank you. Appreciate
Cheers.
it. Bye-bye.